Alright, I'm back. Thanks to Tier 1 Yogi, and resub Bacon, and give sub Crumple. No, I'll pass on it, Raidus. Thanks to resub Alpha Pro and Left Toe Nut. Soon-ish Toe Nut.
1988 to 2006, employees and patrons of the Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris grew accustomed to an unusual but increasingly familiar sight. Amid the stacks of luggage being wheeled across terminals, travelers spending layovers in restaurants and bars, and gift shops filled with overpriced souvenirs, a lone man hiding in plain sight lived on a red bench in the pre-departures lounge of France's largest international airport for nearly 2 decades. Sir Alfred's life inside the Charles de Gaulle Airport unfolded through a tragic series of misfortunes and self-sabotage. His name, like his backstory, was ever-evolving, giving those who attempted to liberate him an impossible task.
He has been pretending to be British since at least 5 years.
Disowned by both family and country, all proof of identity either lost or stolen, denied entry into Paris through the airport exit, and unable to fly to a different destination. Sir Alfred was stuck in a perpetual limbo of both coming and going, a place he remained for 18 years. This is the story of Sir Alfred Moran of Terminal 1.
Is this what that Tom Hanks movie is based on? Yeah, this is what it's based on? I didn't know that. Yeah, we did the Suicide Squad trailer at the beginning.
Arrived at the Charles de Gaulle Airport on August 26, 1988,
not like super excited.
He was a soft-spoken man in his early 40s, eager to catch a flight to the United Kingdom where he hoped to meet his biological mother for the first time. As he boarded the flight, along with several suitcases filled with his essential possessions, Alfred didn't expect he'd be returning to the pre-departures lounge at Charles de Gaulle mere hours later. Or that it would be there he would watch the world transform around him, new technologies arriving and fading away, entire nations collapsing and reforming. Experiencing it all through newspaper articles and fleeting fragments of overheard conversations. When he arrived at the Heathrow Airport in London, he failed to produce a passport or any other identifying information to the immigration representative. They'd been stolen, he claimed. Alfred was detained and then put back on a plane to Charles de Gaulle. He was initially arrested by airport authorities for attempted unlawful entry into the country. They ultimately determined his residence inside the airport violated no laws, but they were unable to permit him to enter Paris without proof of who he was or where he was from.
He's a big tier 2.
His flight would remain until Alfred himself was able to provide the necessary documentation.
Everybody is not my problem. When that man will come with official documents, then we will accept him. So it's his problem to
Exit Tier 1 very smexy and prime.
They are playing with him.
Alfred decided, at least momentarily, to settle into Terminal 1, a bustling part of the pre-departures lounge which resembled a shopping center. There was a McDonald's, an electronics store, the entrance to a hotel, and hundreds of people, all too preoccupied with their own travel plans to notice him. Amidst it all,
they could save him, right? They can't just like take his hand and bring him on the plane.
An outside fountain, a view which would become achingly familiar. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Alfred became a part of the Charles de Gaulle landscape. The chime of the intercom which accompanied flight announcements, he heard hundreds of times a day. At night, he curled up on his red bench, his blue jacket serving as a blanket. He'd wake up early before the airport became swarming with passengers to maintain basic hygiene in the terminal bathroom. He made friends with a few airport employees, such as those at McDonald's, which provided nearly all of his meals. Occasionally, people who knew of his situation would supply him with toiletries, clothes, meal tickets, and money. He would deposit what he didn't immediately need into a savings account which he'd opened with the airport post office. He kept his mind from dwelling.
It's like American Horror Story Season 1. He can't leave this area.
Would regularly see Sir
His soul is
unmistakable scalp poking above a rectangle of newspaper, surrounded by plumes of pipe smoke. To anyone who would listen, Alfred would explain that his home country of Iran had expelled him. His family had abandoned him. He was all alone, a stateless enigma the world simply wished to forget.
Oh wow, that
By
was
the following
hard.
year, Alfred had saved up enough money to purchase another plane ticket to London. Despite having failed to solve his identification dilemma, Alfred decided once again to test his luck. And once again he was denied by Heathrow Immigration and sent back to Paris, where he was detained, arrested, and eventually returned to Charles de Gaulle.
Oh no, at least send him to a different
Deportation was not an
airport,
option,
fuck.
as there was no birth country on record to which he could be deported. Settling back into his red bench, Sir Alfred resigned to the fact that this would be his home for the indefinite future. It wasn't where he belonged, but it was the only place he was allowed.
And this is loneliness and
Yeah,
not too happy.
I imagine. That's
I
seems
hope
like shit.
the result will be a happy end.
Fuck,
But
this
who
is
was Sir
horrible.
Alfred? And how far back did the roots of his misfortune stretch? And was he a victim of bureaucratic circumstance or his own mind?
His own mind. What do you? He didn't tell Iran to like wipe his birth record. Like, what do you mean?
Born with the name Moistcr1tikal Nasiri, Sir Alfred enjoyed an affluent upbringing in Iran. His father was a doctor who worked for the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, providing a comfortable life for his wife and 6 children. But all this was upturned, Moran states, after his father's death in 1972. His mother revealed that she was not actually his mother, that Alfred was
Jesus
the product of
Christ.
an affair his father had had with a Scottish nurse.
What?
Moran's illegitimacy was a secret the family had closely guarded, due to adultery being a capital offense in Iran during the 20th century. With no claims to his father's inheritance and his sense of identity shaken, Alfred, a college-educated man in his 20s, sought to leave Iran and the family who had betrayed him.
Thanks to get something spicy.
For a couple years, he lived in Bradford,
Yeah, he
England.
showered in the sinks,
There,
I
he
think.
enrolled in graduate courses in economics, becoming involved in political demonstrations, while receiving a stipend from the woman he'd previously known as his mother. But after 2 years, the money stopped coming in, leaving Moran with no choice but to return home. When he arrived in Iran, Moran alleges he was arrested and imprisoned by the Savak secret police,
Oh my
who interrogated,
God.
tortured, and expelled him from the country.
What the
Based on
fuck?
evidence that he had participated in protest against the Iranian Shah. Moran was given refugee status by the United Nations Committee on Human Rights and granted travel documents which would allow him to pass freely between countries which had signed the Geneva Convention. Moran lived a restless, nomadic
Thanks,
life
I
around
already said
Europe
that.
for several years
Off the
before
twice, sorry.
eventually setting his sights on Scotland. It was there he hoped to find his biological mother, the only family he believed he had. His first attempt to enter the United Kingdom from Paris was by boat, and it's during this time at a nearby train station Moran claims his briefcase containing essential documents such as his passport and refugee
good
papers
lord.
was stolen. After being arrested for
Who
attempted
cursed
unlawful
this
entry,
man?
a recurring theme in Moran's story, he decided to try again, this time by plane via the Charles de Gaulle airport, and it was here his journey came to a halt.
And this is the life for about 8 years, 9 years.
By the early 90s, Moran attracted the attention of local press, and the man who lived in the Charles de Gaulle airport as journalists would dub
He's
him
Prime
began
Artist.
to regularly receive letters, postcards,
Ask
and
him for
care
money.
packages
Say, if
from
you're gonna put me on the news, you're gonna pay me
With
10
no
grand.
address, his mail would be forwarded
son
to
of a
Dr.
bitch.
Philippe Bargain, the airport
Haggle.
physician whose attention to Moran's situation placed him into a de facto intermediary role.
His physical health is fine. His psychological state of mind is less good.
Please let Mr. Nasiri know that many people are concerned for his well-being and that we feel bad about his
I know
plight.
Brandon Rogers
Read one of the
content,
many
not what we're
letters
looking
he
for tonight,
received,
but I am
often
familiar.
with cash included. Dr. Philippe Bargain was joined by human rights lawyer Christian Bourget, who would keep Moran from facing further arrest
Thanks
due
for
to his
sub, Dopey.
misfortune.
When he was arrested in '89 for the third time in France, he asked me to defend him.
Bourget would
I
even
hope by
attempt
the end
to
of his
recover
18 years
stolen
living here, he
documents.
bought the airport.
But unbeknownst to Bargain
saved
and
up
Bourget,
enough money to buy
Moran
it.
was undergoing a personal transformation. Based on a letter he received which mistakenly addressed him as Sir Alfred, Moran had begun a reinvention of himself. Where Moistcr1tikal Nasiri had been shunned and rejected, Sir Alfred was a local celebrity whose newspaper articles and letters from supporters sat in large, ever-growing stacks near his red bench. He began introducing himself as Sir Alfred.
At the beginning, I can just
He's a tier 1
introduce,
booty pub in the gift sub suite.
Alfred Moran, or Sir Alfred Moran.
A harmless change if left on its own, but Moran's transformation wouldn't end there. And as Dr. Bargain and Christian Bourget would soon learn, it was a transformation thorough enough to render their efforts useless and increase Sir Alfred's stay in Charles de Gaulle by nearly 10 years.
What? Because he was cosplaying as a knighted man? He just called himself Sir Alfred. Like, what do you mean? That's fine. You could just say, no, it's still just Alfred. How? How did that one simple title change everything?
By the mid-90s,
Well, I guess we can't help him
people
anymore.
had
It's
begun
Sir
to
Alfred
take
now.
notice of the
Now we're
quiet
fucked.
man who had made a life for himself inside Charles de Gaulle.
It's a
His
fucking
situation was
nickname.
novel, tragic, and for writers, artists, and filmmakers looking for inspiration, a potential subject. A
But Alfred isn't part of any of his
1998
name? Yeah, but it's a
opera
fucking
titled
nickname.
Flight tells the story of a character named the Refugee, who is stuck at an airport, unable to enter the country or fly
Thanks, Recep
elsewhere
Gallen.
due to his missing passport.
Yeah, after we finish Cinder's mod, I'm gonna do Bloodborne. Thanks to tier 1 Kit Kat.
A French independent comedy titled Lost in Transit, with a protagonist who misplaces his passport becoming stranded in a Paris airport, debuted in 1993 to lukewarm reviews. But Sir Alfred's situation wasn't limited to fictionalizations. In 1999, a husband and wife team of documentarians went to Paris in order to interview Moran for a short documentary titled Sir Alfred of Charles de Gaulle Airport. The documentary showcases a quiet, introverted Moran reading and incessantly writing in his journal, while completely at ease in front of the camera. And through the film's interviews, the extent of Moran-Karimi-Nassiri's transformation into the British-born Sir Alfred is revealed. A reinvention so absolute that he refused to speak his native language of Persian, scolding those who addressed him in anything other than English.
I see.
I said, true, I am not Iranian. And
So when, oh, I see what happened. So when
The
he started
denial of
calling
his
himself
Iranian
Sir
heritage
Alfred,
extended to nearly
the
every
people that were trying to
aspect
help
of
him
his life.
legally couldn't anymore because he wouldn't go back to his real name of Moran.
When asked what documentation he had to prove he was born in Europe, he became evasive, stating
I thought it was just a
"It's
fucking
just
nickname."
information."
What information?
it's just information
Where did you get information?
in my paper.
The papers that you write?
Yes.
When asked how he qualified for the title
Thanks, you
Sir,
give some, please
a
don't.
knighthood bestowed upon British citizens of high regard, he replied,
By virtue.
but perhaps the most startling demonstration
Yeah,
of commitment to his
yeah.
new persona came in July of 1999, after Christian Bourget, who at this point had been handling Alfred's case for nearly a decade, had finally located his missing papers. Despite claims
Actually,
of
10
them
gift
being
subs, J
stolen,
Swizz.
the lawyer discovered that Sir Alfred had
Thank you
mailed
for the
them
big
to
drop.
Belgium authorities while en route to London during his first attempt to enter the country. Sir Alfred's reasoning for this is unclear. When questioned about it, he dismissed it as a moment of folly. We had a little celebration, airport doctor Philippe Bargain told the Irish Times, but Alfred wasn't happy. He thought the papers were fake. Alfred's
Oh,
insistence
God.
that the papers didn't belong to him was based on two irredeemable complaints. His name was listed as Moran-Karimi-Nassiri,
Oh, no.
not Sir Alfred.
Oh no.
His birthplace was listed
Oh,
as Iran.
fuck.
Alfred wanted it noted that he was born in Britain. He would also accept
Oh,
Sweden
living at the
or
airport
United
destroyed him.
States.
He told me that he was not even born in Iran. I was born in Sweden. How can you say that?
With the only evidence
Thanks
to
to Prime
support
Mike.
these biographical changes being anecdotal from Sir Alfred himself, he was asking the impossible, and it's likely he knew it. Bargain and Bourget were beside themselves with frustration. They'd been working on Sir Alfred's case pro bono for years, and having solved his problems, Sir Alfred needed only to claim the papers in order to resume the
Oh,
life he'd
God.
enrolled 11 years earlier. But as far as Sir Alfred was concerned, he was an entirely different person from the man who'd entered Charles de Gaulle in 1988. Moran-Karimi-Nassiri might be free to go, he stated, but Sir Alfred is not. But what about his search for his biological
Oh, there is no Moran.
He's talked about
Only
it for so
Alfred.
many years, Bourget told the Sunday Times. I thought at last he'd be able to go to Scotland and search for her properly. And after 11 years inside
Is it
Charles
tier
de
1
Gaulle,
this stuff?
killing time on his
Prime
red bench,
not-
eating fast food fish
not
sandwiches
sure.
every day for lunch, didn't he want to go home? Sir Alfred's response was startling. "I'm already home," he said.
Oh no. Fuck, this is like something right out of a fucking anime. Well, a sad anime. A bad anime, really.
By the early 2000s, Sir Alfred had become something of a minor celebrity, and independent filmmakers and journalists were no longer the only ones interested in his story.
The Prime
The
Penny
man
guy.
who had been living in Charles de Gaulle for 15 years had caught the attention of Steven Spielberg. DreamWorks acquired the rights to his life story for a film titled The Terminal. Tom Hanks
Yeah.
would play a character loosely based on Sir Alfred,
I had no idea this was based on anything.
Thank you.
a stateless refugee stuck in an airport, eating fast food, bathing in the public restroom sink, sleeping on a bench.
But he gets
caught in a
jobs.
bureaucratic glitch that held
He
him
gets
hostage
jobs at the
inside
airport.
An international transit lounge.
I am delayed long time.
But the complexities of Sir Alfred's situation were much more paradoxical. The bizarre nuances of Moran's identity crisis, the fact that he could, in actuality, leave whenever he wanted, didn't make it into the Hollywood rendition, which was flattened into a romantic comedy that occasionally bordered on slapstick. When the film was released in mid-2004, a popular photo opportunity was Sir Alfred posing next to the poster advertised in his home of 16 years. Some photographers even managed to capture the absurdity that he would likely never have the opportunity to see the movie. Publicity surrounding Sir Alfred during the film's release was at an all-time high, as people wanted to meet the
Bring him
man
a
who
fucking portable
inspired the
DVD
film.
player and just
Did you know
play
that
it.
a man has been living at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris for more than 16 years? He has no possessions, no
Yeah, I
home,
like-
no
whoa,
ticket,
by this
and
channel,
no money.
Phoenix
And now
Jones? Okay.
Hollywood has used his story as inspiration for a new film.
Alfred's story to the media was the same as it had been since the beginning. He was expelled from Iran, his papers containing his true
Madra.
identity were lost, and now he waited in Terminal 1 of Charles de Gaulle for their return.
He says that he's still, 16 years on, holding out for the return of his papers.
But the people most familiar with this situation knew the truth. The only person keeping him inside Charles de Gaulle was himself. The peculiarities of his situation
This is
deepened
nuts.
when it was revealed that DreamWorks had paid Sir Alfred a large sum to acquire the rights to his story. The exact figure differs among sources, but appears to be
300K?
somewhere between $175,000
What's up?
to $500,000.
You going to bed?
Sir Alfred simply deposited
Okay,
the
I'll say
money
goodnight
into
in a
his
sec.
airport post office savings account, where it remained out of sight and out of mind. While the terminal bore only a situational resemblance to Moran
Thanks to Tier 1 Smiles.
those who wished to
Give sub
experience
Kane.
Sir Alfred's story firsthand would only have to wait a few months. In September of that year, Alfred published his autobiography, which he had spent years writing on his red bench, aptly titled Terminal Man. The book was co-authored by graphic novelist Andrew Donkin, published by
Thanks
a
to
British
resub.
division of Penguin
Ironic.
Random House, and would be
thanks
printed
for
in
3 gift
multiple
subs, ironic.
languages and editions.
Thank you.
Reader reviews were mixed, with reactions ranging from fascination and pity to outrage, both at Sir Alfred for his stubbornness and on his
What is
behalf.
this? For all your general douchiness, you can just rot for all I care. Wow, Jesus. Since you wrote this, probably not the emotion you were going for. Takes a combination of nasty bureaucracy, rank stupidity, pig-headedness, and indifference of others to get stuck in a terminal for that long. Well played, your dick majesty. Well played. Jesus, Tony. That's big talk from a guy who took a picture, what is this, on the toilet? What is going on here? I mean, the book might suck ass, to be fair, but this is scathing. He was stuck in a fucking airport for 9 years. Of course he lost his mind. Anyone would. Oh, right, you can't see his picture. There. Yeah, that is wild.
For the bureaucratic potholes which allowed his statelessness in the first place. It was clear readers wanted to empathize with Sir Alfred, but their empathy was cut with frustration at his inaction. Moran would hold author signings from his red bench at Charles de Gaulle, since people who wanted an autograph knew exactly where to find him. Terminal Man has been out of print for some time, with only a few used copies circulating online, often priced to reflect its rarity, making it something of a collector's item. By the mid-2000s, Sir Alfred had enough money to begin a new life, and with the paperwork that he needed only to claim as his own within constant reach, his problems were now internal rather than external. Desperate attempts to persuade him to leave to resume his life only resulted
Ludwig is
in
the next
exasperation.
Alfred.
As Dr. Bargain told the Baltimore Sun, he'd offered to take Sir Alfred on vacation with his family to Brittany, France, but he refused. Many began to wonder, was his newfound international celebrity so beguiling that he was willing to remain on his red bench indefinitely for fear of losing it?
That is
If his
exactly what
recovered
happened.
paperwork and several
His
hundred
mind
thousand
broke. It's all he
dollars couldn't
knew.
nudge Alfred through
And the
airport
attention was what he
exit and into
craved the
world,
most.
What could? And was his insistence that he was still a hapless prisoner of the airport despite
thanks for the
overwhelming
10 gift subs
contradictory
again, Honey
evidence
Crisp.
integral
Thank
to
you.
the Sir Alfred persona he'd created for himself? The
I'm
general
not sure,
assumption
Madra.
was that the trauma Moran had experienced throughout his adulthood had caused him to retreat into a fantasy reality, one in which he was now reluctant to escape. But that very same year, in September of 2004, a filmmaker would publish an investigative piece for The Guardian, which would call into question the few remaining details of Sir Alfred's backstory that had yet to be disproven.
Alfred, would you want to leave the airport or not?
Hitting him with it right point blank.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave the airport without you knowing what you're going to do. I can help you. I can. These people, this place in Paris, they said that they can handle it. They're experts in this. You could go there. You could sleep there.
I think you should. You didn't finish it?
2004 would be one of the most noteworthy years for
the
Sir
fuck?
Alfred. With the release of The Terminal and subsequent publication of his autobiography,
Thanks, Honey Crisp. Hope you're having a
more
good
and more
night.
people began turning their attention to the man who'd lived inside Charles de Gaulle for 16 years. This proved both good and bad for Sir Alfred. He clearly enjoyed the spotlight, but as more attention came to his situation, the less control he had over the narrative. The cracks in his story had been showing for years, but it wasn't until filmmaker Paul Berkseller's investigative profile of Sir Alfred, titled The Man Who Lost His Past, did these cracks widely
Not a very
swallow
good
Alfred's
clickbait
story
title.
whole. Sir Alfred
How about
had
the
been a
man who
longtime
lost his
subject of
past and lives in an airport
who
for
earlier in the
16
decade
fucking
had
years?
spent nearly a year at Charles de Gaulle in order to film what he referred to as a low-budget art house feature titled Here to Where, detailing the life of Sir Alfred in what IMDb is labeled a mock documentary. Berkseller had hoped that the conclusion of
Thanks
his
for
film
Prime
would be to
Queef.
convince Sir Alfred to finally leave Charles de Gaulle, with the final cinematic shot being the two of them leaving together through the airport exit. But just as those who had tried before and since, Berkseller found Sir Alfred immovable.
Alfred, I would love to see you. I'd love to see you on the stage, everyone applauding. You know, because you'd left the airport and we'd made this movie together.
Yeah, more successful.
Imagine how great it would be.
He's trying. He's going for the popularity angle. Very good. Very good, Paul.
Overshadowed by other films dedicated to Sir Alfred debuting around the same time, very few people have seen Here to Where. But Berkseller's investigative contribution to the story of Sir Alfred is arguably the most illuminating. With the publication of The Man Who Lost His Past, Berkseller had done what none had done before him. He'd made contact with Moran's family back in Iran, and he asked them the questions many had been wondering for years. If Sir Alfred had come from such a large family, why hadn't any of his 5 siblings attempted to help him? His location, after all, was no mystery.
Holy shit.
It turns out they had. On multiple occasions,
No!
throughout the
Oh, God!
family and friends
It just keeps
visited Sir
going!
Alfred at Charles de Gaulle. But instead of their brother Moran Karimi Nasiri, they found the British-born Sir Alfred, who simply refused to acknowledge them. He pretended they were complete strangers. The second revelation came when Berkseller had asked after Alfred's expulsion from Iran, his arrest and torture at the hands of Iran's Savak domestic security force for his protest against Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. As Berkseller writes, Alfred participated in a student strike at Tehran University in 1970 to object to a new university regulation. Things started to get out of hand and Savat got involved. They questioned all the students and gathered up the ringleaders, about 20, including Alfred.
So that was a lie!
After a few hours of
What the
questioning in
fuck?
the university classroom,
I don't know what to
the matter
believe!
was apparently dropped. This was evidently Alfred's only serious problem with the security services. There was no arrest, no
This guy
torture,
started to
no
live
confiscation of his
fanfic.
passport, and no deportation.
What?
Bookseller continued. It was not nearly as dramatic of a story as Alfred remembered. But perhaps the most startling of all...
What the fuck? So he had... Wait. So he had his passport and everything the whole time? What the fuck? Wait. Is that what that means then? This guy just said one day, I just want to live in a fucking airport. The twists in this are nuts! Jesus Christ! Oh, right. They found it in Belgium because he shipped it to Belgium. Right, you're right. I forgot. They did find all of his shit because he sent it all to Belgium. Sorry, there's so many moving parts to the Sir Alfred extended universe here. Good God. This is nuts. Alright, hold on. I'm gonna go say goodnight to Tiana real quick. I'll be right back. Thanks to the resub, literally owner of Twitch. He was trying to gain squatters' rights. Yeah, just take over the airport by living there long enough. Be right back. Alright, I'm back. Thanks to the Prime Colbert. And thanks to the Tier 1 Demon Phoenix. Give me 1 second. I was gonna look something up, but I don't want to spoil it. We still have 10 minutes left of it. I don't want to be spoiled on anything. Okay, never mind. Let's run it.
It was not nearly as dramatic of a story as Alfred remembered. But perhaps the most startling of all was the debunking of Sir Alfred's reason for leaving Iran in the first place, the illegitimacy of his birth. Berkseller couldn't contact Sir Alfred's Iranian mother, the woman who'd reportedly shunned him and sent him on his European journey in search of his birth mother, because she'd passed away years earlier. But according to Sir Alfred's siblings, she was heartbroken at the accusations. Miran, after all, was her biological son, and she'd never told him otherwise.
What the fuck?
Many had long speculated this aspect of Sir actions.
He made up everything? Every single aspect of his fucking movie protagonist life was fabricated? This is wild. Thanks to the resub Obi-Wan and Crankshaft. No, I haven't heard of that game, Rotalk. Wow. This is like actually the wildest fucking story. This is just so nonsensical. This guy trapped himself in an airport for 18 years and convinced everyone that it wasn't his choice and came up with like the saddest, fucking craziest story you could think of with all of the plot twists of like some old fanfic, My Immortal shit. And none of it is real. And this was just to be in like newspapers and movies. Imagine what he would have done to be TikTok famous. Again, ahead of his time. He was a pioneer. The clout-chasing progenitor here.
Moran, after all, was her biological son.
Thanks to
and
tier
she
1
never
crabs
told him
and the prime
otherwise.
guacamole.
Many had long speculated this
Not yet,
aspect
Kimbab.
of Sir Alfred's story was fabricated. Regardless of how fundamental to his residence at Charles de Gaulle it was, the glaring counter-evidence, his distinctly Middle Eastern appearance, couldn't be hidden.
Il me disait qu'il était résultat des amours illégitimes entre son père, médecin, et une infirmière anglaise. Il a quand même pas une tête d'anglais. Il fait adhérer tout le monde à son délire.
With the foundations of Alfred's origin story disproven, the question arose, what exactly was he doing there in the first place?
Yes.
And why wouldn't he
Why,
leave?
Alfred?
As Philippe Bargain told the Sunday Times, he is completely lucid and functional, but he is pathological. To be honest, he'll probably die here.
Oof. And just one day decided I don't want to be at the airport anymore. And
By
he just left.
2006, Sir Alfred had lived in Terminal 1 of Charles de Gaulle for 18 years, nearly a third of his life. He'd watched ever-changing fashion trends, significant scientific leaps forward, and the ushering in of a new millennium, all from his red bench scattered with newspapers and cigarette butts. Many wondered, if Moran still fostered plans of one day leaving, would he be mentally equipped to re-enter a transformed society of which he had only vicarious exposure? As Dr. Bargain told the New York Times, he believed Alfred would need to be weaned from the airport, like an addict. The young man who'd first arrived in 1988 had grown gaunt, sallow, and gray. As a semi-permanent fixture of the Charles de Gaulle pre-departures interior, he reportedly hadn't stepped outside since 1999, where he witnessed a total solar eclipse.
That was the only thing
As
that got
many
him
had long
outside to watch the
speculated,
eclipse? That shit is
Sir
always so
Alfred would
boring.
never leave the airport of his own volition. Terminal 1
That's probably
became
why
a
he didn't go
place where
back
he could
outside
write his
again.
own history, become
Fucking
someone
bored.
else entirely. Leaving would be an admission that he was, and had always been, Moran Karimi Nassiri from Iran, an identity he no longer wished to carry.
Why don't you speak to me in Persian?
Off. No
What
more.
are you afraid of?
I am not afraid of anything here.
I want to help you.
I'm sorry.
But in July of 2006,
It's like talking
Sir
to an
Alfred was
Oblivion
taken from Charles de
NPC.
Gaulle by ambulance. A health emergency beyond the
Damn.
resources of the airport medical center required his relocation to a nearby hospital. The exact details of Sir Alfred's condition weren't reported, and therefore left to speculation. Unlike his mental health, the airport doctor had reported over the years that his physical health was normal, despite a diet consisting almost exclusively of McDonald's. But a clue can be found in a book review of The Terminal Man, where a traveler passing through Charles de Gaulle in 2005 spoke with Sir Alfred after purchasing a copy of his book. Sir Alfred had disclosed that he had a brain tumor and was grateful for the sale because he would need it for his medical bills.
What?
Several photos and videos also feature a growth on the top of his head that appeared to grow larger over the years. One can't know for sure the reason for his medical emergency, but once Sir Alfred had been relocated for treatment, his stint inside Charles de Gaulle had finally come to an end. Sir Alfred remained in the hospital for several months, eventually being transferred to a local shelter provided by Paris's Emmaus Solidarity movement in early 2007. His red bench hovel near the window overlooking the
Colton
fountain was
upscale.
disassembled, the traces of an individual living there for nearly 2 decades erased. The peculiar story of Sir Alfred's life inside Terminal 1, while arguably the most high-profile case, is not the only one of its kind. Across the world, many others have experienced their own lengthy layovers, with several cases still ongoing. But unlike Moran, most are doing so involuntarily. The list of such instances is long.
Yeah, I've definitely
including
heard of it for like a
high-profile
week
figures
at
such as
most.
American whistleblower Edward Snowden, who spent over a month inside an international airport in Moscow, awaiting asylum after fleeing the United States.
Like the prime
Russian
condition in
President
Recep
Vladimir
Whiskey
Putin this
and movie
morning
music.
also told reporters in Finland that Snowden remains in a transit zone at the international airport in Moscow.
A refugee named Hassan Al-Kantar was stuck in a Malaysian airport for 7 months.
No, I don't
after
have one
being
actually,
exiled
Colt.
from Syria following his
I don't have that
refusal
card.
to join the military. Due to an expired visa, Kantar was stranded in Kuala Lumpur International from March to October of 2018 before being granted asylum in Canada. Kantar made the most of his situation by posting daily pictures and videos on Twitter to his audience of supporters.
Good morning, everyone, from Kuala Lumpur International Airport. Always and forever. It's almost 4:30 a.m. now. I'm trying to sleep. I could not yet. It's okay. Some nights are harder than others.
The Hassan family, including 4 small children, were stranded for 50 days inside a Moscow airport due to allegations of forged visas. A handwritten sign that stated, "Please don't touch our things because we are living here," was placed at the borders of their makeshift home. Seeking asylum is among the most common reasons individuals have found themselves trapped.
Yeah, so these are like
Rejected from
real,
entering their country of
unlike
refuge,
Sir
unable
Alfred,
to
who just
return
wanted to
home,
live
and
there
with
for
no
some
other
reason.
options than to remain where they are. A few instances of people living in airports voluntarily have occurred. Denise D'Souza, who reportedly ran away from home as a teenager due to arguments with his stepmother, has remained in GRU International in Brazil for the last 20 years.
What?
Those who visit Terminal 2 of the Sao Paulo airport will likely
What
see
the
an
fuck
honest
do you
bench,
mean?
McDonald's coffee cup in hand. After being given an ultimatum by his wife and in-laws to either quit smoking and drinking or move out of the house, Wei Zhongwao has lived inside Terminal 2 of Beijing International Airport for the last 10 years. It's a public place, he said of his new home.
What?
Anyone can come.
The fuck?
Sir Alfred's motivation for living in Charles de Gaulle is less clear. Dr. Bargain theorized to the Irish Times that Moran may have originally fled his home country to avoid conscription in the Iran-Iraq War. But his decision to remain, to continuously move the goalpost for leaving,
Thanks to the
acting
gift
as
sub
both
smiles.
captive and captor, is perplexing. As Sir Alfred may have feared, once he was no longer the man inside the airport, the media lost interest. News coverage regarding his current whereabouts is scant. Occasional rumors suggest him to be alive and currently living in Paris, although confirmation from credible sources appears non-existent. But whatever came of Moran Karibi Nasiri, he fought long to win the name Sir Alfred. The identity of a man who could adapt to the white noise of hundreds of
Prime
people
G's
constantly
and Deadbird.
surrounding him, who would sit at his red bench and watch passengers journey back to their homes, letting go of his desire to do the same. We can only wonder if he took that identity with him as he entered the city he'd watched from behind his window for 18 years. Or if Moran Karimi Nasiri left Sir Alfred behind in Charles de Gaulle where he belonged.
He did pretend also that he was American. He did pretend that
What
he
a
was
fucking story.
Canadian.
Holy shit. God damn. So, okay, let's see. Where is he at now? Should I look up Sir Alfred or like his actual? I'll just do Sir Alfred. Oh, it still comes up the same. Yeah, just, wow. There is almost nothing recent about where he is now. Yeah, the second he wasn't in the airport, nobody cared. That's fucking sad. So she casually dropped another one. So there's a guy in Brazil living in the airport for 20 years? Because he got into an argument with his fucking mom? She told him to stop playing video games. He just fucking flipped over his desk and then decided to live at the airport for 20 years? Let's see, who is that guy? It was Denise Luiz de Souza. He's been living in a Brazilian international airport for 19 years. Oh my fucking god.